Hello, my name is Kelly. Ever since I was a child, I had one dream that never faded. I wanted to become a journalist, or at the very least, to work in the world of magazine publishing. Writing was never just a hobby for me, it was a lifeline. I loved words, loved how they could inform, inspire, or challenge the way people thought. As a teenager, I used to stay up late at night scribbling stories, drafting pretend magazine articles, and even designing mock covers on my computer. I wasn't just drawn to writing, I had a natural gift for observing the world around me. Trends, cultural shifts, small stories that others overlooked, I noticed them. So when the time came to choose a career, there was no doubt in my mind. I pursued a degree in journalism and media during my college years, pouring my energy into every assignment, every internship, every late-night deadline. When I graduated, my journey wasn't glamorous. I didn't land a big job at a famous publication. Instead, I worked for smaller companies, often ones no one had heard of, but I didn't mind. To me, the joy came from knowing I was living out my passion, inching closer every day to the writer and journalist I always wanted to be. It was around this time, when I was about 30, that my life took a turn in an unexpected direction. I met Matthew. From the moment we met, there was a spark. He was warm, thoughtful, and supportive, and I felt a sense of stability with him that I had never experienced before. He came from a wealthy family, his parents owned a thriving business, and he was already involved in helping his father, Larry, manage it. But where there is light, there is often shadow, and that shadow came in the form of Matthew's mother, Grace. From the very beginning, Grace made it clear she didn't approve of me. She had a way of looking at me that told me I would never be good enough for her son. She criticized my profession, belittled my achievements, and scoffed at my background in journalism, as though it were a frivolous pursuit. At first, her harshness cut me deeply. I couldn't understand why she despised me so much when I had done nothing to deserve it, but Grace seemed to believe that she had every right to demean me simply because she was Matthew's mother. Thankfully, I wasn't alone. Matthew always defended me. He would step in during her tirades, reminding her that my career was important and that I deserved respect. Larry, too, supported me. He was a kind, gentle man who often stood up to his wife's cruelty. Over time, I learned to grow resilient to Grace's comments. It wasn't easy, but I realized that if I let every insult sink in, I'd destroy myself from the inside out. Matthew even suggested we limit contact with her, but I couldn't bring myself to agree. He worked with his father in the family business, and I worried that reducing ties with Grace might create a rift between him and Larry. I didn't want to be the reason for family discord. Instead, I chose patience, believing that with time, Grace might soften. But fate had other plans. Our relationship with Grace took a drastic turn when Larry had to travel abroad for an extended business trip. Not wanting to live alone, Grace insisted on staying with us until Larry returned. I had my reservations. I knew what it meant to live under the same roof with a woman who could barely hide her contempt for me, but I told myself it was family, and family came first. Living with Grace turned out to be even harder than I feared. Her criticisms were relentless. The way I cooked, the way I dressed, the way I arranged the furniture, even the way I laughed, everything became a target. Still, I held my ground. As long as she didn't cause any real damage, I told myself I could endure it. Then came the week that changed everything. At work, I had been entrusted with leading a major redesign for one of our magazine's sections. It was the biggest opportunity of my career so far, one that could lead to a long-awaited promotion. I poured myself into it, working late nights and barely sleeping. Matthew supported me wholeheartedly, making sure I had meals and quiet time. But Grace, she was indifferent, if not outright dismissive. The night before my big presentation, I sat with Matthew in the living room, voicing my fears. What if I fail? What if they think I'm not good enough? I whispered, my nerves getting the best of me. That was when Grace, who had been eavesdropping, decided to step in. Well, Kelly, she said bluntly, her tone dripping with disdain, I overheard your little pity party, and honestly, you probably don't have the skills for this. You'll likely do poorly tomorrow. Maybe it's a blessing, you can finally quit this nonsense and focus on being a proper wife. Her words stung like daggers. It wasn't just a lack of support, it was a deliberate attempt to crush me on the eve of the most important day of my career. I can't believe he married a journalist, she sneered. My son deserves better. Something inside me snapped. Mom, you're overstepping. I don't have time for this nonsense. I have more important things to worry about than your opinion of me. Her face darkened. How dare you speak to me like that? So, it's fine for you to insult me, but not for me to defend myself, I shot back. She turned to Matthew. Say something, your wife is disrespecting me. But Matthew stood firm. She's just defending herself, Mom, I don't see anything wrong with it. Grace's eyes blazed with fury. You'll regret this, Kelly, just wait. I brushed off her threat, focusing on the presentation ahead, but the next morning, when I arrived at work, disaster struck. My laptop had been wiped clean, every file, gone, every backup email, deleted. My entire project, months of effort, vanished into thin air. I stood frozen, my heart racing. My boss wasn't sympathetic. He accused me of being careless, unprofessional, and unprepared. He had a backup presenter ready, and just like that, the promotion slipped through my fingers. Humiliated and broken, I rushed home in tears. Matthew took one look at me, dropped everything, and pulled me into his arms. What happened? He asked gently. Through sobs, I explained. Everything was deleted. My files, my emails, it's like someone erased my entire project. Matthew's brow furrowed. That doesn't make sense. How could that happen? I don't know, I whispered, though deep down, a suspicion was already forming. Grace. She had access to the house, she had seen my stress, and her words the night before, "You'll regret this," echoed in my mind like a curse. The thought made me sick. Could she really stoop that low? Her smug smile when she saw me crying later that evening only deepened my suspicion. She muttered under her breath, "Maybe now you'll finally give this nonsense up." That was the moment I decided I needed proof. If Grace had sabotaged me, I would catch her. Quietly, I bought a hidden camera disguised as a smoke detector and installed it in my office. I synced it to my phone, setting everything up without telling anyone, not even Matthew. Then I baited the trap. I began acting visibly stressed around the house, pacing in my office, sighing heavily, muttering about a new project. I wanted Grace to take notice, to feel tempted again. It worked. One afternoon, she walked into my office, eyeing me with fake concern. "What's wrong, Kelly?" she asked, her lips twitching in a mock sympathetic smile. "Another big project? Feeling the pressure again?" Grace tilted her head, her eyes narrowing slightly as if she were trying to pry open a secret I hadn't intended to share. Her voice carried that familiar tone of condescension as she prodded, "So, what's got you pacing around like that?" "Another one of those articles?" Taking a deep breath, I forced myself to meet her gaze, reminding myself of the tiny camera hidden above us, silently recording. This was my chance. I had to bait her, had to let her think she was uncovering something important. With calculated calm, I confided, letting just enough vulnerability slip into my voice to satisfy her curiosity. "I've been given another chance to present my work," I said softly, tucking a strand of hair nervously behind my ear. "If it goes well, it could even lead to a raise." Grace raised a thin brow, her lips curling with both skepticism and interest. "Oh?" Her tone was half surprised, half dismissive, as if she were already certain the opportunity would crumble beneath me. "Yes," I continued, deliberately letting my voice waver, masking my anxiety with a fragile smile. "It's my last chance to get things right. I can't afford to mess it up this time." My eyes flicked toward the laptop on my desk, a gesture I knew she would notice. Her lips pursed. "And why aren't you telling Matthew? Is it because you're embarrassed about your job?" I swallowed hard, feigning hesitation, then replied quietly, "No, it's not that. I don't want to disappoint him again if I fail. He believes in me so much, and if I let him down again," I shook my head, pretending the thought was unbearable. "Please, Grace. Let's keep this between us, okay?" Grace's smirk deepened, her eyes glinting with something almost sinister. "I'm not promising anything," she said, her words laced with mockery. "But it'll certainly be interesting to see what happens tomorrow." Her tone sent a shiver down my spine. It was too casual, too calculated, as if she already knew what the outcome would be. The question I'd been holding back spilled out before I could stop myself. "Why do you always want me to fail?" My voice cracked with a mix of frustration and pain. She scoffed without hesitation, as if the answer were obvious. "Because I think you'd be better off as a housewife. Honestly, Kelly, it's less embarrassing than whatever it is you're trying to do now. You'll never belong in Matthew's world." Her words struck like venom, but instead of breaking me, they ignited my resolve. "I don't have time for this, Grace," I said firmly, my patience wearing thin. "And I don't care what you think. Please leave me alone so I can practice my presentation before Matthew gets home." For the first time, my voice carried enough authority to halt her smugness. Grace's eyes lingered on me, her expression tight with suppressed fury. Finally, she turned on her heel, but not before casting one last glance at my laptop. That brief smirk, so sharp and satisfied, seared itself into my mind. I sat there in silence for a long time after she left, the unease in my chest refusing to settle. Even at dinner, as Matthew and I tried to maintain some normalcy, I caught Grace stealing glances at me, her lips twitching in faint, knowing smiles. Each one felt like a knife twisting deeper. Later that night, after Matthew and I had retreated to the comfort of our bedroom and slipped into our nightly ritual of watching a show together, I could barely concentrate on the screen. My mind kept circling back to the hidden camera. I had to know. When Matthew finally dozed off, I quietly retrieved my phone and opened the feed. At first, the footage was uneventful, the empty office, the steady tick of the clock on the wall. Hours passed. Then, just after midnight, the feed jolted to life with movement. Grace. She crept into the office like a thief, glancing over her shoulder before approaching my desk. My heart raced as the camera captured her settling in front of my laptop, her fingers moving swiftly across the keyboard. Then, with chilling precision, she forced a restart and began clicking through files. My stomach dropped. It was her. It had been her all along. I shook Matthew awake, thrusting the phone in front of him. "Look," I whispered urgently. Groggy at first, his eyes widened as he processed the image on the screen, his mother hunched over my laptop, rifling through my private files as though they belonged to her. Shock gave way to disbelief, then hardened into fury. Without another word, Matthew stormed out of the bedroom. I followed close behind, clutching my phone. The office door banged open, and Grace nearly leapt out of her chair, caught in the act. "What are you doing in here, Ma?" Matthew's voice thundered through the room, his anger barely contained. Grace straightened her back, feigning innocence. "Oh, nothing really. I just couldn't sleep, so I came in here." "Don't lie to me," Matthew snapped, his eyes blazing. "Why is Kelly's laptop open? And don't tell me you were tidying up at midnight. We both know that's not true." Grace's nostrils flared. "Don't talk to me like that, I'm still your mother." "Yeah," Matthew retorted bitterly, "my mother who seems to enjoy hurting and sabotaging my wife. We caught you on camera, Mom. We saw everything. You reset her laptop, you deleted her files, you ruined her work." For a split second, panic flickered across Grace's face. Then she tried a new angle. "You were spying on me? Recording me without my consent? That's disgusting." "I didn't put cameras in your room," I said sharply, stepping forward. "I installed one in my office, my space. And you went in there without permission." The confrontation unraveled from there, her denials, her attempts to twist the blame, her desperate insistence that she had done nothing wrong, but Matthew stood firm, his disappointment cutting deeper than his anger. "You crossed a line, Mom. You don't get to sabotage Kelly and then play the victim. I want you out of this house tomorrow." Grace's voice cracked with a rare note of desperation. "But I'll be all alone." "I don't care," Matthew interrupted, his tone final. "I don't want to talk to you. Pack your bags." The following morning, Grace stalled, lingering in the kitchen with forced cheerfulness, cooking breakfast as if nothing had happened, but Matthew was resolute. By the time she came to the table, her bags were waiting by the door. He had even ordered an Uber. Tears streamed down her face as she begged him to reconsider. It was the first time I had ever seen Grace cry, but Matthew didn't flinch. He walked away, leaving me to face her one last time. "You think you've won," she spat bitterly, her voice trembling. "You set me up." I leaned closer, my tone calm but firm. "If anyone should be yelling, it's me. You're lucky I haven't shared that footage with your friends and family. If they saw what you did, you'd lose everything." Her mouth snapped shut. For once, Grace had no comeback. When she finally left, silence filled the house like a blessing. I exhaled for what felt like the first time in weeks. My career still hung in limbo, but something in me had shifted. I was no longer afraid of Grace, no longer desperate for her approval. In the months that followed, I left my old job and poured myself into growth, taking advanced courses, expanding my network, and sharpening my vision. With Matthew's unwavering support, and a few key introductions from Larry, I landed the role of chief editor at a globally recognized magazine. It wasn't just a job, it was validation, it was freedom. And Grace? She stayed silent for a long time, licking her wounds in private, but I knew it was only a matter of time before we crossed paths again. That moment came at a glittering company event, where industry leaders and powerful figures mingled beneath crystal chandeliers. Matthew and I entered hand in hand, poised and confident. Larry greeted us warmly, but Grace's smile was sharp as glass. She looked me up and down, her voice dripping with derision. "Look at you, trying so hard to fit in." Before I could respond, Larry chuckled. "She doesn't need to try, Grace. She belongs here more than most." But Grace wasn't finished. "How's unemployment treating you, Kelly?" she asked loudly, drawing curious glances. Larry's brows shot up. "Unemployed?" "Oh yes," Grace sneered. "She lost her job. I've always said she wasn't good enough for Matthew, and now the truth's out." Before Matthew could respond, the CEO of my magazine called my name from the stage. The room erupted in applause as I was ushered forward, the spotlight bathing me in gold. Grace's smug expression froze, disbelief etched across her face. As I accepted the award for innovation and leadership, I thanked Matthew, my colleagues, and, carefully, a critic whose doubt once pushed me to prove myself. The crowd laughed appreciatively, but I kept my gaze steady, my meaning clear. When I returned to the table, Matthew embraced me proudly, Larry clapped me on the back, and Grace sat in stunned silence. And for the first time in years, I no longer felt the need to win her approval. I had already won.